Eric Alexander, Six Arrows Consulting, and today I've got Alan Van Ongevalle here with me, a friend and colleague. We worked at the bank together, and we had a lot of opportunities through the years to do some good collaborating, and that's the topic I want to talk about today. So Alan's a good one to talk about that.
Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Good.
And let's dig in.
So collaboration. How would you define collaboration, and what does it look like in the workplace?
Yeah, great question. So collaboration's easy to talk about. It's tough to mind the shop enough personally to make it effective, in my opinion, but it's extremely valuable. So it's the relationship between you as a leader and other leaders in the organization. It creates this sense of community, but also an open channel for actual business conversation dialogues, making things more effective, eliciting and pulling out of your partners their honest opinions, leveraging their expertise, making sure that you're listening as much as you're asking questions and talking. It's the single most important and effective way that I've ever found to succeed in business.
It's interesting you use that phrase that you used a lot with me at the time of our years at the bank is partner. Yeah, that dynamic's important. You want to talk a little more about that?
Sure. So that concept of partnering means that you're always running things you're working on by somebody that's a partner. Partners are anyone in the business that impacts your areas of influence, and you need to have their expertise, their input. You need to have their understanding of what you're doing and why. And it allows you to paint a picture so that they come along on the journey with you. And that partnership, in my opinion, defines the success long-term as well as short-term.
Okay, that's good. So what happens, what's it look like in an organization when it's weak, when the collaboration's lacking?
Yeah, you end up with silos, number one. And we all know silos are just unhealthy. People do things without asking for and gaining the perspective of other areas that they may or may not have impact on the project or whatever it is that's being worked on, the strategy. It allows open and candid conversation. You don't always have to agree, and that's as important.
But we didn't always agree?
No, we didn't, but it was always beneficial, right? The education that came from that, the perspective, as you well know, you'll hear me use the phrase, my point of view. You were probably one of the most affected at altering my point of view, right? You would bring things up, you would plant seeds, we'd go off and talk about them in our teams, and we'd come back and say, all right, is this what you were referring to? Help me understand a little bit more. And the strength from that partnership showed in the product that we produced. It was truly phenomenal.
Well, I experienced that phenomenal as well. In a way, Alan was not primarily, to a great extent, he and his departments were customers for my finance team. But again, in an organization, everything feeds off everything else, and that collaboration was powerful. So oftentimes we, bean counters, sneaking accountants, we're kind of off in our own little world. Talk about collaboration with the finance function.
Yeah.
Why even bother? What kind of value does that bring in the areas that you're responsible for?
Yeah, no, another great question, Eric. It's frankly the most important baseline relationship that I'll ever have in any organization, and that is because we use numbers, the financial numbers, the metrics, those KPIs to actually drive the business, right? So as we take those KPIs and we turn them into an OKR where we actually start to drive the strategy from the data, that only comes when you have a strong partner and a great collaboration relationship with your finance and accounting team.
So before you go on, talk about KPI and OKR, just in case those aren't familiar.
Sure. So the KPIs are those indicators, those metrics that are actually showing you whether a process or a function is what it's doing from a numeric value, and allows you to set goals so you can tell if you're hitting them, you're straying from them. It's the gas gauge on the car as you're going down the road.
The key performance indicators.
Yes.
And how do they relate to the OKRs? OKRs are what?
Yeah, so the OKRs are the metrics, the strategies that you're building. And what it does, a KPI is important, But like I said, it's really the gas tank measure, but it's not the plan for the trip. So when you plan that trip, you take those OKRs and you're driving towards a destination.
So it's your objectives, it's your results you're looking for.
Exactly, and you state them, you align them with the corporate strategy, and you march to them. So the part that the finance and the accounting group plays in that's just invaluable. They know the basis of the numbers. So there's a lot of insight that comes from dealing with the numbers with them as we do our MBRs, our management business reviews. So they're tied to us at the hip, and they're actually making suggestions. They're asking deep, difficult sometimes questions about the numbers that we see. They're doing deep dives without us even asking because they see something in the data. That's that true partnership. But the output of that in that management business review really is the foundation for those OKRs to drive outside performance. What I mean by that is not just your internal group, but the organization as a total, pulling and pushing along in alignment to those strategic objectives.
Okay, so all kinds of memories are popping into my head of our journey through that together. And so do you hear him saying over and over, drive. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to them about you for a minute. One of the things that I found was fascinating about Alan is how effectively he was able to drive, but it wasn't in a crack in the whip. It was, let's look at the data. What are my levers? What does the data tell me about changes we can make in our business for better outcomes?
Yeah.
And watching my teams, now we got to collaborate,
Yep.
but what was really fun too was watching my teams collaborate with him and his teams, and they were able to see in a powerful way how valuable their role was, how valuable the information they were responsible for was in helping transform the business.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well,
Any final thoughts on this?
yeah, one last one. This only works if the leaders are in lockstep. And kudos to Eric. What he just described would not have been possible had we not been in lockstep as to the vision and the direction. So Eric clearly set the table for them. They became participants. They became a part of our business unit. Even though they didn't report to anybody in our area, they didn't need to. And that concept of using data to drive benefit is so much more important than the concept that some people misunderstand. Data is not a weapon. It's not meant to be a bludgeon to beat on teams to change the numbers. That comes organically through understanding the numbers and making sure you're tying it to the strategy. It's truly amazing working with your teams.
Amazing, and one of the things we don't have time to talk about, but it may be a conversation for another time, one of the things along the way that made it so effective with my team is how good he was at eliciting their engagement.
Thank you.
By his high level of appreciation that he showed for good work. And so it wasn't just about their efforts, it was about what they were able to deliver. But thank you. Glad y'all got to hear from Alan. We may talk some more later. Thanks for listening. Lots of good stuff to think about.
Thank you.